What is class in Python and why we need them? So before jumping into that, let's check. We have a name variable which contains a string Tom, and we have another variable marks obtained which contains integer value. Let's say 549. So here we can see these variables contains a single type of value. So it contains name contains a string and marks obtained variable contains integer value. So what if we want a variable that contains these two values in a single variable? So in that case, we need classes, and also class supports methods as well that we can use to manipulate or maybe update the representation of this value. So let's now learn about classes. So classes basically contains data members and functions related to it, and it is just a type of encapsulation for values to be accessible. So class is defined by class keyword in Python, then space, and then we need to write class name. So let's say we have a student class. So this is, I'm writing the comment here. This is class name. Now we need to define class variable. So let's say we have school name as a string. So let's say St. Paul's. So this is a class variable. So this is how we define a class which contains only single class variable. Now how we can access this class? So we need to create objects of this class. How to create them? So objects are basically variables that contains the enclosed format of the class, and each format will contain different values. So let's say object 1, we call the class constructor. So this will call this class constructor method, and a new memory will be allocated, and that will be referenced by this object1 variable. Here we don't have to pass anything. I will write comment class object. So this is a class object, and if I want to access this class variable, how I can access? We can access it through either class object or directly by class name. So let's print object1 dot. So by using dot operator with the object of this class, we can access the class variables. And another way of accessing is by using directly the class name dot. Let's run this program and check the output. So here we can see the school name is printed 2 times. So this is how we access the class variable and we create the class object. Now this class variables are shared among all the objects of this class. So let's say we have object 1. Now let's create another object. I will remove these statements. Let's create object 2 and then student. Let's print object 1 dot school and print object 2 dot. Here we can see both of the objects print the same value of school because this class variable is shared among the all the objects. So what this sharing of class variable among the object means? It means there is a single memory allocated for this class variable and it is a shared memory and all the objects of this class will refer to that memory. So any updation in that memory will reflect in all the objects. Let's update this value and then check whether the objects are having the same value or not. We'll update using the class name, then class variable name, and we update it to, let's say, new school. And now let's print these objects again. Let's run this program. So here we can see earlier they printed the original school name, and then once we updated the school, so we updated the memory that St. Paul's school is updated to new school, and all the objects are now pointed to already pointing to that memory, and now they have the new school. So what if I want to have a different values for each object? So in that case, we use the object variables, or we can say the uh, data members of the class. So how to create them? So let's check that. We can create them by using constructor. So how we define a constructor in a class? So constructor is a method. So we have used def keyword, and this is the constructor. So for every class, irrespective of the class name, always init will be the constructor of that class, and it will be called automatically when the object of this class is created. So we can have two values as well. So let's say I want name and marks obtained, and we can have a class variable. So let's say one more class variable, let's say total marks 500, and in the constructor, so what is self? So self means the object of this class for which the constructor is called. So in object or self, we will create a new variable or the class data member or the object data member. Self.name equals to the name which we are getting while creating the object of this class, and then another data member, marks obtained, marks obtained. So these variable names can be anything. It should not be like we are passing name here, so we should use name only. We can use student underscore name as well. So now we have created two data members of this class. Now let's create the object. Let's say object 1 equals to student Tom. So name will be Tom and marks obtained, let's say 490. Now how we can access the values? We can Okay, first let me show you. Let me add a print statement here. Constructor called. We can print start and then print end. Let's run this program. So here we can see first start is printed, then we created the object. So whenever the object of a class is created, the constructor is called. So self here means the object itself, then name is the first parameter, and then marks obtained is the second parameter. So now constructor is called. Okay, and then it is printed, and then we have created two data members of this class, name and marks obtained, and we have initialized the value. So constructor is used to initialize the data members of the class. So now let's remove these print statements and let's see how we can access these data members. So we can use object name dot, and then we can use name. So we can print object one dot marks obtained. Okay, let's run this program. So here Tom is printed and then 490 is printed. Now let's try to use these data members with class name. Let's say student dot name. Let's run this program. So here we can see it gives the error. Why? Type object student has no attribute name. Okay, so here we don't have any class variable with name as name. So these are the variables of object and these are the variables of class. These are the shared variables across all the objects of this class, and these are the variables whose values are limited to that object only. So how we can show that? Let's okay, before printing it, let's have another object with class student, then name as Harry, and the value as 400. Now let's print the values of both the objects. So object one dot name, object one dot marks obtained, and similarly let's print that for object 2. Let's run this program. So here object one dot name and object one dot marks obtained is are Tom and 490, and object 2 contains Harry and 400. What if I update? I mean, updating the school and total marks will modify in both of these objects, but here we can see the name, I mean object one dot name for both the objects are different. So if I update any one of it, let's say object one dot name equals to uh, let's say new name, and let's print again. Okay, so here we have the old names Tom and Harry, and then for the object one we have updated new name, so it contains new name, but object 2 remains unchanged. So this is how we create the constructor of the class, and we create the data members of the class, and we how we access the data members using the dot operator with object name. So this is about the constructor and about the self parameter. So self means the object itself. Now let's learn about the methods or the member functions. So I will just move these print statements. Member functions. So its name suggests it is a function, so we need to use def keyword, and we can write n number of functions. So let's say show percentage, and so this is the name of the function, and here you have to notice like we have used self here. So self represents the current object to which this function is being called. So every member function will have the self variable. So it's not mandatory to use self word only. We can use any word, but first parameter of the function in a class will represent the current object. Instead of self, we can use obj as well, or not object. Object is a keyword, but we can use current or current object. We can use anything, but first parameter will always represent the current object. So generally we use self. Now let's print the percentage here. So we can have percentages marks, sorry, to rise percentage as self dot marks obtained divided by self dot total marks or student dot total marks. We can write anything. So I will write student dot total marks and then multiply by 100. So this is the percentage, and we can return the value, or we can print the value as formatted string, and in that we will use variable percentage and then space and percentage sign. Okay. So now let's call this show percentage. Object 1 dot show percentage, then object 2 dot show percentage. Let's run this program. So this is how we call the member functions of a class using the object with the dot operator. So here object 1 dot show percentage shows the 98% for 490 out of 500 marks, and object 2 dot show percentage shows 80% for the marks 400 out of 500. So this is how we define a member function or a class function, and we call the function. We can also pass the parameters as well, and I mean, let's say anything. Say show symbol, and we can write a condition. If show symbol is true, then print along with symbol, else print only the percentage value. And here we need to now send the parameter either true or false. So let's say in first case we want to write percentage symbol, and in another case we don't want to write percentage symbol. So here we can see in the first case we have percentage symbol, but in second case we don't have. Even we can parameterize it, like we can provide a default value as false, and we can remove the value because default value is false. So here we are not sending any parameter, so it will consider the default value as false. We can rerun the program and see we don't have the percentage symbol. So this is how we call the uh, member function, and we provide the values or parameters to the member function. Now, what if I write um, the object? What if I print the object? Let's say print obj1. So it prints something like this: main, the main file or the main function, and then we have student class, and it is the object and the memory location. So this is the default format of the class. So what if I want to print it in some other format? So what we can do is we can write or override a dunder method str self. So the methods which contains double underscore at the starting and at the end are called dunder methods or the magic methods. So these are already provided by the Python. So whenever we create a class, so it will always contain these methods. So we are overriding it just to print something else instead of this. So we need to return a string that will get printed. So what we want to return, let's say we want everything in the arrow keys, and it will be a formatted string. So we will use variables like the class name. So self dot, we can use this class and dot name. This will print the class name, which is student. So either we can directly have written the student as a string, or we can use the variable. Okay. Then we want space, and then we want to write, let's say, the student name. So self dot name. So class name student space the student name. So this will get printed. So let's print object1. Now object1 is printed like student, which is a class name, and then a space, and then self dot name, which is Tom. If I create object2 with some other name, let's say student Harry, and marks as 400, and let's print this object. So student 1 contains name as Tom, and student object 2 contains Harry. So object 2 is printed like class name space then Harry. So this is how we override the dunder method string to represent the object whenever it is printed through print function. Now let's learn about access types. So we'll uh, remove some methods. I will clean the code. So let's say we have a constructor. We have self.name and marks obtained. So these are normal variables or the data members which can be accessible directly through the object. So we can say these are public variables. So we have three types of variables: public, private, and protected. So the difference is that the private members cannot be directly accessible through object, but public and protected can be. So in Python, they are not, I mean, like other languages, we cannot directly or indirectly use the private members, but in Python we can indirectly use the Python private members. I will show you how we can access, but for now, let's learn how we define the private and protected data variables. So we have already learned this is the public variable because it can be easily accessible by the object. So for private, we have to add double underscore, and for protected, we have to use single underscore. So these private and protected members can be used by the member functions directly by using self, but through object we cannot use the private member. So let's first create the object. Let's say object one equals to student with name as Tom, marks as 490, and let's try to print object one dot. So here we can see object one dot name is not visible. Let's try to print object one dot marks obtained. So marks obtained is visible because name underscore name is a private variable. This is protected because it contains single underscore at the starting of the name. So here it says student object has no attribute name underscore name. Why? Because it is a private variable. So let's remove that. Now let's check the protected. So yes, it is accessible. So this is just to represent that this is a protected variable, but as a functionality, it doesn't have any impact on the code. So how we can access this private variable? We can access it through member function. But what Python does is it creates this name variable as underscore class name, then underscore the variable name. So how we can see that? We can see that by using dir command. And we are printing the output of the dir command, dir object 1. Let's print that output. So yes, the first here we can see. So this dir command prints the all the functions, dunder methods, and the class variable names and the variable names of this class. So it prints everything. So here it prints this self dot underscore name, which is a private variable, as underscore class name underscore variable name. So if I directly access this obj1 dot underscore student underscore name, obj1 underscore student underscore name. Yes, let's run this program. So here it prints Tom because we have provided the name in this. So functionality wise, it has impact only like we cannot directly access with the object and dot operator with underscore name, but indirectly we can access like this. Now let's check about the functions, member functions. Def, let's say show, we have self. So every member function will be having this first parameter as a current object, which is self. And now we can try to print or access self dot name directly and self dot marks obtained directly. So object one equals to students. So this will create the object of this class and call the constructor and set these values. And then to call this, to print this, we need to call this show method. So object1 dot show. So we don't have to pass anything. It will be object will be passed by itself internally. So we don't have to pass anything. Let's run this. So here show is called, and in methods we can directly use the private and protected variables. So this is all about the access types of a class. Now, what if I want to write a class, but I don't want to write anything? No init, no function, no variables. So just in case that I have a class and I will write its definition later on. So what we can do is we can directly write pass keyword, and even we can create the object of this class. So we don't have to send any parameter because we don't have any init function or the constructor which accept these two values. So it will call the default constructor which Python has already in the code, and we can create the object. Since it doesn't have any function show, so we cannot call that as well. But what we can do is we can print the object. So let's run this program. Here we can see the main file and or the main function, then a student class. This is the student class, and it object at memory location. So it prints that. So this is how we can use pass keyword to skip the definition of a. That's all about the classes in Python.